Hey film fans, my name is David. This is Film Collector Archive, and on today's episode of Postscript, we are talking Leonard Maltin. If I were to credit one name with my love for film and film history and film collecting, it would most certainly be that of Mr. Leonard Maltin. Now, for those that are not familiar with Leonard or his work, you really should be, especially if you're into film history. So just to give you a brief introduction as to who Leonard Maltin is, he is a film critic and film historian who really first and foremost is a fan of film. From a very young age, he started his own fanzine. He was in fact a teenager when he managed his own fanzine. He had a subscriber base of, I believe, a couple hundred people, and even still in his teenage years, made his way up to interviewing celebrities. Now, this eventually worked him into a career with Entertainment Tonight, as their film correspondent, and he would do film reviews and had a career there for about 30 years. He is now, and has been for about the same amount of time, 25 or 30 years, is a professor of film studies at USC, University of Southern California, and offers a class, basically a film survey class. And they are able to bring in a lot of names in the industry in for interviews in class. They're able to have screenings of films, and from my understanding, it's one of the most popular courses offered at USC. Now, outside of teaching, he's also written about a dozen books. And he has also produced a very, very popular, now long out of print series for Disney on DVD, and that is, of course, the Walt Disney Treasures series, a very sought after collection by collectors that are, again, long out of print. For over 10 years now, they've been out of print. I am lucky enough to have been able to track down the complete Walt Disney Treasures collection, and that is really the crowning achievement of my personal film collection. But he's done a lot of work with Disney over the years, and in fact, that was my entry point for Leonard Maltin in my own life, was picking up his book when I was a kid on the Disney films. I became really engrossed with the content, and just really formed an already budding love for Disney films when I was young, but gave me a lot of context, and I found that really interesting as a kid, and that was some of the first memories I have of really kind of studying film as an art form, not simply something that I was watching, but something that I was learning about. Most people are going to be familiar with Leonard Maltin through his movie guide, which I don't even know how many editions of that book there are. It's basically the movie Bible. It has thousands and thousands of short form film reviews. There's a star rating system, and not only is there the movie guide, but there's also Leonard Maltin's classic movie guide, which focuses on early films. And I have both on my shelf, and they are an essential part of my collection, and just an essential reference point for my collection. In fact, probably the most essential in terms of just having film reference on the shelf. So he's written a total of about a dozen books, and the video today we're focusing on his newest offering. This book just came out last month, and this is Starstruck, My Unlikely Road to Hollywood. And I just finished reading this again. It just came out last month. As you can see, not a gigantic book, but my goodness, what a wonderful, wonderful read this was. So this focuses on an array of topics, including his early years. He talks about working on his fanzine, getting some of those first celebrity interviews, and that just segues into a whole list of topics that we cover in this book. He talks about, of course, a lot of the more notable interviews that he was able to conduct, including Katharine Hepburn, Bette Davis, John Wayne, Jimmy Stewart, George Lucas, just to name a few. And he has some really interesting anecdotes with a lot of those interviews. I remember when I was growing up, the interviews that he did with George Lucas came as a feature on the VHS release of the original Star Wars trilogy, episodes 4 through 6. And I remember wearing those tapes out and knowing who George Lucas was, but was really curious as to who it was that was interviewing him. And so that actually came even prior to my reading his book on the Disney films. So that was really my first exposure to Leonard Maltin. But it also, he talks a lot in here about the film festival circuit, and that's something that he is really involved in, even to the point that him and his daughter Jessie, they, who are really business partners, to the point that they even started their own film festival, Maltin Fest, which had its inaugural year in 2019. Obviously, after that, the world came crumbling down with the pandemic. But they are, I know, actively looking to get back to Maltin Fest. But they really are involved with the film festival circuit, and he talks at length about that in the book, which is really great. He does cover a whole chapter actually on the Walt Disney Treasure series, which I was really happy to read about. And he also talks about the podcast that he has with his daughter. Now, aside from the podcast, he does also have a site, leonardmalton.com, where he writes reviews, film reviews. But if you're into podcasting at all, or listening to podcasts, I should say, you should really seek out their podcast. It's really informative. They get some really great names on there, and it is well worth your time. I love his tone in his writing. He's very informative, and you'll learn through reading this book his personality. He's a very, very easygoing, very even-tempered kind of guy, and that's something that I've always really loved about Leonard, is just his personality, his ability to communicate so well with people, and his knowledge is incredible. His research and just all of the information that he has in his brain on film and film history and names and dates and details is just really, really incredible. So as you read the book, you feel like you really do get to know him as a person. And I thought it was really funny because at one point in the book, he talks about going to the Playboy Mansion, being invited by Hugh Hefner, and he was there on more than one occasion. And it's funny because I think of him as his words, not mine. He's a little bit of a square, as he says. And just the thought for me of Leonard Maltin at the Playboy Mansion just brings a smile to my face. It's just a really funny thought. But got to be really good friends with Hugh Hefner, and just his overall experiences are just pretty incredible. how well traveled he is, how many names he's spoken with. I know he remembers really fondly his interview with, for instance, Katharine Hepburn. But just some of the names that he's interacted with are, I mean, the top names in film history. I know for him, if he could interview one person that he was not able to interview, that is Walt Disney. He has an extensive interest and knowledge of Disney and Disney history, and for him that is the interview that he would like to conduct. And it says a lot about Leonard when you know his favorite film of all time, which is Casablanca. He has a wealth of knowledge in all of film and cinema, but classic Hollywood is really where his knowledge shines and what he talks on most. So if you want to learn more about classic Hollywood, look no further than Leonard Maltin. So that's just a brief review here of his book. I highly recommend it. And this is available on Amazon. I'll drop a link in the description of this video. Let me know if you're a Leonard Maltin fan. Let me know if you're going to be picking up this book. Again, I highly suggest it. It is a great, easy read, but very, very informative read at the same time. So yeah, I'll leave the link, all the notes and everything in the description, a link over to his site. And so definitely let's support this book. I'm looking forward to whatever it is that he's going to write next. I'm always there for a new book from Mr. Leonard Maltin. And until next time, let's keep the conversation on film alive and well.